She screamed until her throat bled, pinned to the cold dirt behind an abandoned gas station. Her cries tore through the night air, but there was no one coming. One officer held her down with a knee to the back. The second one laughed as he ripped at her clothes. And the third, the sergeant, whispered into her ear, "No one's going to believe you." 20 years old, college sophomore, the pride of her father's life. They took turns, her wrists bruised from the handcuffs, her mouth swollen from the struggle, her tears mixing with blood. And when they were done, they left her body behind. A dumpster like yesterday's trash pants around her ankles. Face frozen in terror, her phone shattered a few feet away. The police report said overdose, closed case, no questions. 2 days later, a knock came at the door of a quiet home on the edge of town. A retired FBI agent, now a widowed father trying to grow tomatoes and forget the violence he once chased across continents and sat. It was a detective, nervous, avoiding eye contact, holding his daughter's necklace in a plastic bag. The words came slow. "There was an incident. We are sorry." The agent stared at the bag, at the tiny hard pendant he gave her when she turned 16. His fingers trembled once, then stilled. He didn't speak, didn't blink. He just walked into the house, closed the door, and sat down. The tremble turned to a stillness so sharp, it could slice through steel. The man they buried when he retired. The man who once hunted war criminals in Bosnia, cartel assassins in Mexico, and traitors within his own ranks. That man just came back from the grave. And someone was going to pay. The man they buried when he retired. The man who once hunted war criminals in Bosnia, cartel assassins in Mexico, and traitors within his own ranks. That man just came back from the grave. But 2 weeks ago, that man was just Dad. It was a Tuesday afternoon when he clipped the last branch off the rosebush. Sunlight poured across his small backyard, a neat stretch of green surrounded by a picket fence he painted himself. His hands, once trained to dismantle weapons blindfolded, now tended to soil and root with surprising gentleness. A small sign sat at the garden gate, "Black Lives Bloom Here." His daughter's idea. "Looks good, old man," she called from the porch. He turned and smiled. She stood there barefoot, sipping iced tea, her curls tucked into a messy bun, a law textbook balanced under one arm. "Don't call me old man unless you plan on helping," he teased. "I'll help with the drinking tea part." She grinned. She stepped off the porch and walked toward him barefoot through the grass. Her name was Alana, sharp-witted, with a sense of justice that had only grown louder since she started volunteering with a legal aid clinic downtown. She was 20, fearless, and already making enemies in a city that didn't like young black women questioning authority. But to him, she was still the little girl who used to fall asleep on his chest during thunderstorms. They spent that evening cooking together, gumbo, her favorite, the kitchen filled with spices, old music, and laughter. "I still don't know how you made it through Quantico without learning how to chop an onion," she joked, watching him fumble with the knife. "I was busy chasing ghosts," he said, chuckling. "Is that why you never let me watch the news as a kid?" His smile faltered for half a second. "Something like that." They ate on the porch under a sky thick with stars. Crickets sang. In the dark, she talked about law school applications, a rally she was organizing, a story about a kid she helped avoid eviction. He mostly listened, proud, worried, amused. "You know you don't have to fight every battle," he said gently. She looked at him with fire in her eyes. "If I don't, who will?" He didn't answer, because deep down he knew exactly where that fire came from, and part of him feared the world would try to snuff it out. Later that night, they watched an old movie together. She fell asleep on the couch halfway through. He turned the volume down, covered her with a blanket, and sat beside her in silence. On the wall, framed photos, whispered memories, her first bike, her mother's smile, his FBI badge long since collecting dust. The house was quiet, safe, sacred, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world had moved on from blood and betrayal. Maybe this town, with its sleepy streets and Sunday markets, really was different. The next morning, over coffee, she kissed him on the cheek before heading out. "Don't forget you have that doctor's appointment at 3, she reminded. "I won't, and drink water. And don't lift the heavy pots without bending your knees." "And Alana," she smiled. "What, you turned out better than I deserved." She raised an eyebrow. "That's because Mum raised me right." He laughed. "True." She lingered at the door. "You always protected everyone, Dad." He looked up at her, that same warmth flickering behind his tired eyes. "I tried," he said softly. "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm not scared of anything." And then she left back straight, eyes forward, heart wide open to a world that never deserved her. He stood in the doorway a few seconds longer, watching her car disappear down the street. Then he returned to the garden, humming a tune only he remembered, and trimming back the rosebush she planted for her mother 5 years ago. Somewhere in the sky, the clouds began to gather. The air felt heavier than usual, but he didn't notice. He was too busy admiring the bloom. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but it was coming. The storm hadn't arrived yet, but it was coming. That evening the air felt strangely still, the kind of stillness that makes dogs bark for no reason, and birds disappear from the sky. Alana was getting ready to go out. Just dinner with 2 of her friends from the clinic. She said, "I'll be home by 10, she added, already slipping her earrings on. Her father stood at the sink, rinsing dishes. "Where you going?" Just Bella. "Grill tacos and gossip. I need a break from civil codes and court filings." He nodded, watching her pull her coat on. "Be careful. Cops have been crawling all over Maine since that protest." "I know." Her tone shifted, light-hearted but sharp. "I'll keep my hands visible and my voice calm. The usual performance." He didn't laugh. "Alana." She turned to face him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. "I'll be fine, Dad." She kissed his cheek. Then she was gone. Her scent, coconut oil and vanilla, lingered behind her like a memory, refusing to let go. Hours passed. Dinner came and went. By 11, he started to worry. He called her. No answer. Texted. No response. Called her friends. One picked up confused. "She left around 9, the girl said. Said she was driving straight home." By midnight, his hands were trembling. By 2 a.m., he was already dressed and driving, eyes scanning every side street, every parking lot, every gas station. At 3:17 a.m., the knock came. This time it wasn't a detective. It was a young officer, barely in his 20s, pale as chalk, lips twitching like he wanted to say more but couldn't. "There's been an incident," he muttered. "They found her body on the edge of town, behind an old gas station that had been shut down since the recession. Her car was impounded, her ID intact, her phone smashed. Official cause of death, accidental overdose, heroin. She had track marks, they said, signs of prior use." He stared at them, expressionless. His daughter was terrified of needles, had never even been prescribed pain meds after dental work. "She was clean," he said, voice even cold. "Run the tox screen again." They didn't. He asked for the autopsy report, delayed. For body cam footage. Missing. He asked to speak with the officers who found her. Denied by the 3rd day. He stopped asking. He started remembering. He dug into her phone records. Last ping, near County Route 14, 10 minutes from the gas station, right around the time she would have been driving home. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses, corrupted dashcam, from her own car, system malfunction, tire marks at the scene. Inconclusive. Everything was wrapped up too fast, too clean. He knew a cover-up when he saw one. He'd done them. Or rather, he'd unmade them for most of his career. He visited the medical examiner's office himself. The coroner wouldn't meet his eyes. She had bruises on her thighs, the father said, fractures in her ribs, defensive wounds on her hands. "Sir, she was raped." Sir, she was murdered." Silence. Then came the lie. "We stand by our report." He walked out into the hallway, and for the first time since her death, he felt something other than grief. Clarity. It hit like a switch being flipped. A door creaking open to a darker room he hadn't visited in years. That night, he sat in her room. Nothing had been touched. Her bed was still unmade, her laptop still plugged in, the scent of her conditioner still lingering in the air. He opened her browser. Recent tabs showed she'd been searching for case law on wrongful arrests. An unsent email to the ACLU sat in drafts. Then he found a name, Jordan Wells, a local reporter with a reputation for stirring up the wrong kind of trouble. He met her at a coffee shop 2 days later. Wells was young, tired, and wearing distrust like armor. "You're Alana's dad," she said, eyes scanning the cafe like someone always being watched. "I am. You shouldn't be talking to me. I'm not afraid of these people." "Well, you should be." A pause. He leaned in. "What do you know?" She hesitated. Then Alana was looking into a case. A black teenager roughed up by local officers. Last spring, she thought the footage had been doctored. Said she found evidence that one of the cops was repeat offending, and the department kept wiping it clean. He didn't breathe. She mentioned names. Wells nodded. 3 all white, all shielded. "This town protects its own." A silence settled between them. Then she added, "This town buries things like this. Buries people." He stood up. "Not this time." As he left, he knew this wasn't just about Alana anymore. This was about the machine. And he had spent his life dismantling machines. Like this. Piece by piece, bolt by bolt, with precision, and with no mercy. He didn't sleep. 3 days passed since the meeting with the reporter, and he hadn't closed his eyes for more than an hour at a time. The rest of the night, he wandered the house like a ghost, the silence louder than any scream he could manage. He kept the lights off, not out of grief, but shame. His daughter was dead, and he hadn't been there. He had survived raids in foreign cities, had stared down snipers, taken knives from terrorists, pulled dying agents out of flaming buildings. He had stared death in the face so many times, he'd grown numb to it. But this wasn't war, this wasn't a mission, this was home, and now he was powerless. In the early hours he sat in her room, every night, his back against her closet door, his hands clenching and unclenching as he stared at the photos taped to the mirror, her high school graduation, the county debate, win, a blurry selfie of the two of them making silly faces at a baseball game. One night he found her old stuffed bear in a drawer, torn in one ear, stitched up by her own tiny hands, when she was 7. He held it to his chest and screamed. Not a cry, not a shout. A raw animal wail that came from somewhere buried beneath. 30 years of restraint. He fell asleep clutching it, soaked in his own tears. The next morning he put on a clean shirt and drove to the station. The front desk officer greeted him with fake sympathy. "We're so sorry for your loss, sir, but we trust the coroner's ruling." He didn't blink. "I want to speak to whoever filed the autopsy. Dr. Thorne isn't available right now. Maybe next week, then I want to see the evidence logs, her phone, her clothes. The dashcam, sir. You're not part of the investigation." "There is no investigation," he snapped. Silence. The room shifted cold. He leaned in, voice lowered. "I helped write your procedures manual. Don't insult me." They threatened to escort him out, and they did, not forcefully but firmly. That night he studied the official autopsy again. Bruises on her wrist, offers full related trauma. Torn ligaments consistent with self-inflicted injury during overdose. No mention of the semen samples, no toxicology breakdowns, just a signed conclusion. Accidental overdose. Case closed. He slammed the report against the wall, pages scattering like dead leaves. He began to spiral. Was he wrong? Was it possible she had been hiding something, using something? The thought alone made him feel sick. He couldn't eat, couldn't drink. His hands shook when he tried to write. He went through her journals, her texts, her email. All clean, all thoughtful, focused. She was planning her LSAT essay the night before she died. She hadn't planned to die the following Sunday. He stood at her grave for the first time since the burial. The sun was high, cruel. The wind didn't move. Her name was etched in cold stone now. Alana Mary Graham 2004-2024, a voice for the voiceless. He knelt down, pressed his hand to the earth. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered. "I should have driven out. I should have called more than once. I should have been waiting outside that damn restaurant." He couldn't breathe, couldn't cry. His body was ice. "This world doesn't deserve girls like you," he said. "And I don't deserve to still be breathing." A breeze moved. Through the trees, dry, faint. He stayed there for hours. By nightfall, something shifted. Not a revelation, not a burst of clarity. Just stillness. The kind of stillness he had learned to fear. The kind that came before he pulled the trigger. Before the door blew off its hinges. Before a target took their last breath. He sat in his car, hands steady. "Now," and he whispered, "if the law won't give me justice." He looked at the small photo taped to his dashboard. Alana, in her cap and gown, laughing. "Then I will." He spent the next day driving. Not aimlessly, purposefully. He went to the outskirts of town, to a storage unit he hadn't visited in 5 years. Inside were relics from another life. Locked crates marked with FBI seals. Hard cases, surveillance gear, old files, guns. He wiped dust off the steel box at the back, his initials carved in marker. Inside, his old service weapon, 2 burner phones, and a stack of unregistered license plates. He took what he needed. Back home, he cleared out his shed, cleaned it, reinforced the locks, set up a desk, pegboards, monitors. It wasn't grief anymore. It was preparation. He printed out names, faces, timelines. He mapped every second of her last known night. And then he found the name he'd been waiting to see. Sergeant Troy Kelman, Officer Patrick Laird, Officer Mitch Connolly. All 3 were on duty that night. All 3 were known for aggressive traffic stops in the black community. All 3 were missing from the patrol log the hour Alana disappeared. All 3 had previous complaints filed and buried. The more he read, the more he saw the web. Internal Affairs redacted everything. Civilian Review Board ignored the protests. Body cams malfunctioned at suspiciously frequent rates. He stared at the whiteboard, now full of string, maps, and faces, and he realized something chilling. This wasn't an accident. It was a habit, a ritual. He pulled out a folder labeled Kelman. Inside was a photo from 2019. A protest, a black teen tackled by Kelman face first into the pavement, blood rage, cameras flashing, and yet Kelman was still wearing a badge. Later that night he visited the grave again. No words, this time, just a nod and a whisper. I'll start with him. His eyes were no longer grieving, they were hunting. What once was vulnerability had become a weapon. And the man who swore he was done with violence was about to become something far more dangerous, a man with nothing left to lose. The man with nothing left to lose had just chosen his first target, Sergeant Troy Kelman. Kelman wasn't the kind of man who raised his voice. He didn't need to. His authority came in silences, in sideways glances, in the way junior officers stood straighter when he entered a room. His badge number had been stitched into this town for over 15 years. Commander of the night shift. Decorated for service, twice commended for restraint in Yusufor's cases, and quietly, infamously, known in the black neighborhoods as the Wolf. No body cams, no reports that stuck, no witnesses that lasted. Kelman ran his squad like a private army. The uniform was his shield, the law, his camouflage, racist yes but smart. His hatred didn't show up in slurs or open violence. It bled through in policy, in pressure, in plausible deniability. On the night Alana died, Kelman was behind the wheel of Patrol Unit 6. It was him who first pulled her over. He claimed it was a taillight. The taillight worked fine. Officer Patrick Laird was in the passenger seat that night. Early 30s, clean, shave, lived in a brick house on the north end of town with a wife, 2 kids, and a rescue dog. His neighbors said he was quiet, good with his hands. His wife told friends he sometimes woke up from nightmares, gripping the sheets like a man drowning. He didn't want to be there that night, but he didn't stop it. When Alana screamed, Laird stepped away. When Kelman ordered her to the ground, Laird turned his head. When Connolly laughed and pulled out his phone, Laird stayed silent. Officer Mitch Connolly was the youngest of the 3, 26, former high school linebacker. More muscle than mind. Transferred in from a nearby district after 2 citizen complaints, both dismissed. Connolly had something to prove, he saw. The badges, armor, a license, a way to make up for all the ways life made him feel small. Alana challenged that. When she refused to call Kelman sir, when she demanded a lawyer, when she cited her rights with a voice that didn't tremble, Connolly snapped. He pushed her, then laughed. Said she was mouthy, said she was probably high. When she bled, he called it so. When she begged, he rolled his eyes. When it was over, and her body was cold, he said, bitch had it coming. 2 days later, they sat in the back corner of O'Malley's Tavern, the only bar in town where uniforms drank free. Kelman sipped whiskey like it was water.com/steady, leaned back in the booth, arm resting across the wood, like a man who'd done this before. Connolly was loud, drunk, laughing too hard at nothing, retelling the bust to another off-duty cop who didn't want to hear it, and she was all like, I know my rights, he slurred. So I said, sweetheart, the only right you got is to shut the hell up. He slapped the table, howling. No dash cam, no problem, right? Laird sat quietly, nursing a beer that had gone warm an hour ago. He didn't touch it, just stared at the condensation running down the glass. Lighten up, Pat, Connolly barked. You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes. Kelman didn't speak for a long time. Then, without looking up, he said, you need to shut your damn mouth, Mitch. The young cop blinked. What? Kelman leaned in. You want to end up in county. You think this town's gonna protect you if you run it like a joke. Shut up. Connolly grumbled, but obeyed. A few minutes passed. A game played quietly on the bar TV. A waitress dropped off another round. Then Laird spoke, barely above a whisper. She wasn't using. You know that. Kelman looked at him, eyes sharp, cold. Doesn't matter. She resisted. She made it messy. She didn't resist. Kelman's voice dropped low. Are you about to grow a conscience? Pat Laird swallowed. She was just a kid. Kelman stared, then calmly said, so were we, once. You want to keep seeing your kids grow up. You want to keep that nice house. Then you'll remember what we agreed. Silence. Kelman sat back, satisfied, but the crack had already formed. Laird excused himself and walked to the restroom, locking the door behind him. There in the mirror, he stared at his reflection for a long time. He splashed water on his face, gripped the sink like it might save him from drowning. He thought of his daughter, her curls, her smile, her voice, and then he thought of Alana, how small she looked that night, how her knees scraped on the pavement, how her eyes never stopped fighting, even after her body did. He covered his face and wept into the crook of his elbow. Meanwhile, Kelman had already started cleaning the trail. He submitted a report marked routine stop, suspected DUI, no evidence recovered. He called in favors with the lab. He handed Connolly a burner phone and said, "If anything comes back on you, ditch it and run." He knew how this worked. He'd done it before. Back in his shed. The father watched the grainy footage from a gas station 3 miles down the road from the scene. There, on the edge of the frame, he saw it. Unit 6, timestamp, 9:47 p.m., direction, southbound, far from their patrol route. He paused the video, zoomed in, printed the frame. 3 cops, 1 girl, wrong time, wrong place. Too many lies. He pinned their photos to the wall, Kilman at the center, Connolly to the right, Laird to the left, and then, beneath them, a single sentence written in red marker. Monsters wear badges too. Each of them had a pattern. Kelman worked out at the precinct gym every Thursday at 7 a.m. Connolly visited his brother's mechanic shop every Sunday before church. Laird was different. He stopped showing up to shifts, called in sick, stopped answering texts. There was fear in him now, regret. But regret didn't wash blood away. The father knew how to break men, and he knew which one would break first. He circled Laird's photo. "You'll be the first to talk." Outside, the sun began to set behind the hills, and the hunt had truly begun. Outside, the sun dipped, loads light, blood-red, bleeding across the sky. Inside the shed, the father circled Patrick Laird's photo with a red marker, then stepped back to take in the wall he had built from memory and obsession. 3 faces, 1 daughter, a sea of lies between them. This was no longer grief, it was reconnaissance. And he knew exactly where to begin. He made the first call that night. He used the burner, dialed the encrypted line, waited. 3 rings. Then, a voice. "What the hell do you want, Graham?" "Need a favor." A pause, then a breath. "It's about your girl, isn't it?" He didn't answer. "You want eyes, ears, or teeth?" "All of them." Another pause. Then, "Give me 12 hours. By morning, the packages began arriving. A box from Virginia, fake plates, prepaid SIMs, cold cash. A courier envelope from Quantico, old files, old contacts, names of sympathetic insiders still buried in the system. A case labeled Tango 13, old service pistol, reassembled and cleaned. He converted the guest room, pushed the bed against the wall, boarded the windows, soundproofed the vents. By week's end, the room resembled a war bunker. Monitors displayed street cams he'd tapped into using an old backdoor exploit. 3 black binders sat on the desk. Kelman, Connolly, Laird, contained photos, shift logs, family trees, side jobs, habits. He knew when they slept, where they shopped, what routes they took when they thought no one was watching. Kelman lived alone in a 2-story house with tinted windows and a reinforced security system. Every Thursday, he jogged 3 miles through the county park, always in a black hoodie, earbuds in, carrying a concealed ankle holster. Connolly lived in a trailer near the industrial district, sloppy, always drunk by 9, had a bad habit of picking fights with his girlfriend's brother. Laird barely left home. He sat on his porch most days, staring at nothing. His hands never stopped moving, kneading, twitching, clenching. The guilt had settled in his bones. The father watched them all. For days, for weeks, from parked cars, rooftops, coffee shops, always unseen, always listening. At first he thought he was gathering evidence, thought he'd leak it, force an investigation, blow open the corruption like he used to in the old days. But the DA never returned his messages. The FBI internal affairs contact he trusted suddenly went dark. A package he sent anonymously. Everything he knew was lost in transit. Even the reporter, Jordan Wells, was silenced. Her editor pulled her from the case. She sent him a final encrypted message. "They're watching me. Be careful." The machine was bigger than he thought, and louder than truth. One night, after tracking Kelman's route to a private security firm downtown, he returned home past midnight, bond-tired, his head pounding. He sat at his desk, looked at Alana's photo, pinned to the corner of the monitor. "Would you hate me for what I'm about to do?" he whispered. Her eyes looked back, forever bright, forever trusting. He wanted to believe she'd forgive him, wanted to believe there was still a way to fight without becoming what he hunted. But what choice was left? He shut his eyes, rubbed his face, thought about packing it all away. One last time, then the laptop chimed. New message received. Sender, unknown. Attachment, video_file_07, BCM. He froze. The file was from an old FBI crawler ghost script buried in retired servers to track leaked internal footage. He clicked. The screen went black, then blurry, then stabilized. It was body cam footage. Timestamped. Night of Alana's death. Marked Unit 6. External Drive 3. Unsynced. Someone had tried to delete it. Someone failed. The first 10 seconds were routine. Kelman's voice. Driver appears to be swerving. Possible 10 to 55. Then Alana's voice. Firm calm. I'm fine. I haven't had anything to drink. Kelman stepped out of the vehicle. She refused. That's when Connolly yanked her door open. The next minute was chaos. Her screams. The thud of fists. The sound of her phone smashing against the pavement. Kelman shouting orders. Connolly laughing. Laird silent. Then, the zipper. The angle shifted. The camera tilted downward. She was on the ground, pinned, crying, begging. Connolly's voice. No one's gonna miss you. Then, static. When the video ended, the father didn't move. Didn't blink. Just sat there. The room was silent. Then came the shaking in his hands. His chest. Not fear. Not sadness. Rage. He had hope somewhere. Deep down that it wasn't as bad as he imagined. He had been wrong. It was worse. By morning he was different. He deleted the footage from the cloud. Burned it to 2 encrypted drives. Hid one in a safety deposit box. The other he mailed to someone he trusted in DC. But this wasn't for justice anymore. It was for her. And for every scream the world ignored, he updated the files. Marked Kelman primary target. Marked Connolly. Loose cannon. Marked Laird. Potential witness. He listed extraction routes. Burn locations. Disposable tools. He stocked up gloves. Zip ties. Syringes. Flashbangs. Untraceable sedatives. His FBI training returned like instinct. Kill clean. Kill quiet. Leave no trail. On the final page of his notebook, he wrote a single phrase. They think they buried her. I'm going to dig their graves instead. That night, he sat in the shed, stripped down his weapon, cleaned every piece, then reassembled it with practiced ease. His eyes no longer trembled, his hands no longer shook, and the part of him that once hesitated, that part died the moment he saw her beg for her life. The war had begun, and this time the system wouldn't be the one holding the gavel. He would, and the verdict was death. The war had begun, and this time the system wouldn't be the one holding the gavel. He would, and the verdict was death. But first, he gave justice one last chance. He uploaded the body cam footage to 3 secure servers, used a ghost VPN routed through Iceland, South Korea, and finally Greenland. No metadata, no trace. He sent the footage anonymously to 5 recipients, a major black-owned news outlet, Jordan Wells, the reporter, a former U.S. district judge in Atlanta, a civil rights lawyer in Chicago, and a Reddit moderator of a viral justice forum. Within 12 hours, it hit the web. Headline: Leaked body cam footage shows brutal assault of black woman by police officials silent. The video spread fast. Millions of views. Thousands of shares. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag justice for Alana. Hashtag expose Kelman. Hashtag she deserved to live. But then, within 24 hours, it disappeared. Struck down from YouTube. Graphic content. Flagged. On Twitter, unverified source. Articles were pulled. Pages redirected. Accounts suspended. Even the Reddit thread was locked by mods under a sudden new no doxing rule. The last remaining article posted on a decentralized platform showed only 312 views before it went offline. Then came the statement from the police department: the footage has been heavily manipulated and edited. We are investigating the source of this illegal data breach and consider it a federal matter. And just like that, the truth was buried. Again, Alana buried twice. Once in the ground, once by the silence. He met with a former FBI friend the next day, retired, long out of the game, someone he trusted. They sat in the back booth of an empty diner, forks scraping dry eggs while gospel music played faintly overhead. His friend leaned in, voice low. I saw the footage. You're right, it's real. But you sent it to the wrong people. They were the right people, he replied. The system's the wrong one. The friend shook his head. They shut it down fast. I heard whispers at the bureau. They're calling it disinformation tied to hostile actors. They're spinning it into national security. You're being watched. I don't care. You should. The man's voice turned sharp. You go further down this road, there's no coming back. You'll be hunted like a terrorist. Every badge in the country will be on you. He didn't blink. They already killed my daughter. What else can they take? His friend reached into his coat, slid an old FBI badge across the table. If you're serious, take this fake name. Real clearance. But God help you if you use it. He pocketed the badge. Didn't say thank you. Didn't need to. Later that week, the pastor came by. An old man, frail but with fire in his eyes. He had buried Alana himself, held her hands in her casket, wept for her like she was his own. I heard what's going around, the pastor said, people talking, saying you're on a path you can't turn back from. He stood silently in the doorway. You taught her better than this. She believed in the law. She died because she believed in it. The pastor placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't let hate be your religion now. That's not the gospel. That's not who she was. But he didn't answer. Just looked past him, toward the edge of the street, where an unmarked black sedan had been parked for the last 4 hours. 2 days later, her fiancé showed up. Micah young, shaken, honest. I got fired, he said. They said I violated HR policy. I posted about her online. I said her name. That's all I did. He paced the living room like a man unraveling. She was going to be my wife, he said, voice cracking. We were looking at rings. She picked a place in the city, a little bookstore where she wanted to say our vows. She even wrote her own. I found them in her journal. He paused, then looked up. Please, don't kill anyone. His throat tightened. It won't bring her back. The father clenched his fists, said nothing. Micah stepped closer. If you do this, you'll lose her again. You'll lose the part of her that's still alive in you. But it was already too late. The part of him that used to believe in redemption had been buried alongside her. The following morning, he noticed the cameras, one on the light pole across the street newly installed. One inside the diner he frequented angled toward the back booths. A man parked 2 blocks down, sipping from a coffee cup that never emptied. He was being watched. He started sweeping his car before every trip, changed routes, used decoys, wore hats, masks, gloves. Once he left his phone at a gas station, let it ping across 3 counties while he drove the opposite direction. The message was clear. They knew he received a fake call from the police, said there'd been new evidence in Alana's case, asked him to come in. He didn't. Instead, he drove past the station, parked across the street, and watched. 30 minutes later, a SWAT van arrived. They were going to detain him quietly. No charges, just hold him, make him disappear. But they had underestimated who they were dealing with. He left town for 4 days, went dark, changed IDs, slept in basements and motels. When he came back, he burned the car they tracked, and upgraded the war room. Meanwhile, cracks began forming in the blue wall of silence. Patrick Laird hadn't left his house in days. His wife had taken the kids and gone to her sister's. He sat in the dark, drinking, watching the door, watching the news, watching nothing. His hands trembled. He pulled out a Bible, tried to pray, couldn't get past the first word, and when he closed his eyes, he saw her, Alana, bloodied, broken, looking right at him. That night he drove to the church, banged on the pastor's door. I want to confess, he said. I can't sleep, I can't breathe. She was just a kid. Their pastor let him in, gave him tea, told him to start at the beginning, but before he could finish, there was a knock at the door. 2 men in plain clothes. No badges. They said they were from the department, said Laird was under stress, said they'd take him somewhere quiet. The pastor resisted. They flashed credentials. The pastor never saw him again. Kelman and Connolly got to him first. Laird resurfaced 2 days later, alive, but changed. He withdrew his kids from school, sold his house, told friends he was leaving the country, but he wasn't going anywhere. Kelman had made sure of that. You say one word, Kelman had told him, pressing the barrel of a service pistol against his ribs, and they won't find your body, let alone your soul. Connolly had laughed in the corner. Preacher, boy wants to play hero now. Laird broke, just like Kelman wanted. Back in the war room, the father pieced it all together. He intercepted a police radio signal, an encrypted message referring to subject Delta. That was his old FBI codename. They had eyes on him, but not enough to stop him. Not yet. He pinned Laird's photo to the center of the wall now. Updated his label, broken, not useful, too dangerous to leave alive. He moved on to Connolly, sloppy, reckless, emotional, perfect leverage. Then to Kelman the wolf, still untouchable, but even wolves bleed. He sat at the edge of Alana's bed that night. Her scent had faded from the pillows. The room was still, but not empty, never empty. He spoke aloud, softly. They know I'm coming. He looked at her photos, but they don't know what I've become. He held her stuffed bear one last time. I'll make sure they never hurt anyone again. And with that, he stood, loaded the first weapon, tightened the strap on his gloves, and disappeared into the night. The system had resisted, but the storm was no longer coming. It was already here. The storm was here, and death rode in its shadow. He moved like a shadow, silent, precise, disciplined, every motion calculated, every step part of the dance he'd once taught to new recruits at the bureau: how to stalk, how to close distance, how to leave no trace behind. He wasn't hunting, he was delivering a verdict. The first officer, Mitch Connolly. It began on a rainy Thursday, just after midnight. Connolly had spent the evening drinking at a roadside dive called the Anchor. He stumbled into his cruiser half drunk, reeking of sweat and regret, mumbling to himself. The parking lot was nearly empty. No one watched as he sat in the driver's seat, the engine idling while he fumbled with his phone. Then a gloved hand reached through the back seat, pressed a chloroform-soaked cloth to his face. He struggled, eyes wide, legs kicking, then darkness. He woke up in the cruiser, still strapped in, parked in the middle of nowhere. Fog swirled outside. Engine off, radio dead. A red light blinked on the dash his body cam was recording. That's when he saw it. The laptop mounted on the dash showed the footage, Alana's footage. Her screams, her blood, his laughter. Connolly thrashed, tried to open the door, locked. Then a voice through the speaker system, cold as ice. You, called her mouthy. She couldn't fight back. Let's see how you do. Suddenly the cabin filled with smoke. Not enough to kill, just enough to panic. He coughed, screamed, punched the window. Then something hissed, a needle in the neck. Silence. The next morning, his cruiser was found in a ravine, smashed against a tree. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Inside, Connolly lay, dead eyes open, frozen in terror. Autopsy, cardiac arrest. But no one could explain the markings carved into his chest. She deserved to live. The second, Officer Patrick Laird. This one wasn't about violence, it was about justice. Laird had broken, his soul was cracked open like a rotting log full of insects and old rot, and the father knew it. He sent the envelope to Laird's mailbox, a photo of Alana, a copy of the autopsy, a USB drive labeled her last words, and a note, tell the truth or die with it. That night Laird drank himself into a stupor, tried to ignore it, but by dawn he was on his knees in the church. He confessed everything to the pastor, to his sister, then tried to go public. But the press didn't care. No one listened. Kelman made sure of that. So Laird did the only thing left. He called the father. They met in an old park, beneath the crumbling remains of a wooden pavilion. Rain fell. Laird shivered, soaked, desperate. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't stop them. I should have. God. I should have. The father stared at him, unblinking. I'll testify, Laird said. I'll give you everything. Their history, their reports. I'll sign it, swear it. Just tell me what you want. There was a long silence. Then the father replied, voice low, I want you to live with it. He handed Laird a black envelope. Inside an affidavit, a list of names, instructions on who to send it to. But if you ever run, the father added, I'll find you. Laird nodded, broken. He lived, but part of him never walked out of that park. The third, Sergeant Troy Kelman, the wolf. He was the hardest to reach, surrounded by security, protected by blue walls and silence, untouchable. But even wolves let their guard down when they think they've won. Kelman's birthday was always a private affair, a small cabin deep in the woods outside town where he drank, smoked cigars, and toasted himself with other cops too dirty to show their faces in daylight. This year it was just him and one guest, a young woman, blonde wig, hired through a second-hand contact supposed to be off the books. She brought the wine, he poured the glasses, drank first, smirked. Best damn vintage I've had in a decade. She smiled, then walked out the door and vanished into the trees. 10 minutes later, the cramps started. His legs gave out, his vision blurred. He crawled across the floor, vomit in his beard, screaming into the empty air. That's when the father walked in. Black coat, black gloves, a silence that felt biblical. Kelman looked up, half conscious. You shouldn't be here. The father knelt beside him, placed the gun on the floor, didn't touch it. Instead, he pulled out a small tablet, pressed play. Alana's footage, uncut. Kelman's face twisted not in guilt, but rage. You think this will change anything? He spat. This town eats stories like hers, chews them up, spits them out. The father stared at him, unmoved. I don't need to change the town, he said. Just bury the disease. Kelman tried to lunge, failed. Then he passed out. When he woke, he was tied to a chair in his own shed, walls lined with files, evidence, photos, a timeline of every life he'd ruined, and in front of him 2 buttons, one red, one blue. A speaker crackled to life. Red button, confess on camera. Full statement, send to press. Everyone sees you for what you are. Blue button, I walk out. and I make you disappear." Kelman laughed. Then, to the father's surprise, he pressed red. "I was never afraid," Kelman muttered, "because I knew no one would ever touch me. But you're not just anyone." He looked up, eyes defiant. "But it's still not justice. You know that." The father walked into frame, held up the camera. Kelman looked into the lens, and confessed everything. Every name, every cover-up, every lie. When the footage finished uploading, the father turned away. Kelman spoke one last time. "Now what? You kill me." There was silence, then the sound of a gun being chambered. "No," the father said. "You already did." He pulled the trigger. The next morning, every inbox in every newsroom received a single video file. Subject: "I was the wolf." Inside Kelman's full confession, names, evidence, timestamped files, copies of internal memos, even the names of the judges who buried the complaints. The story exploded. It couldn't be buried this time. Within 24 hours a federal investigation was announced. By day 3, the police chief resigned. By the end of the week, the entire department was under review. Protests returned to the streets not just for Alana, but for all the names Kelman listed. As for the father, he disappeared. Some say he crossed into Mexico. Others claimed he lived off-grid in Montana. A few believe he's still out there, watching from the shadows, waiting to finish what he started. But no one ever proved a thing. No fingerprints, no trace, just 3 dead cops in one town forever changed. Micah visited Alana's grave that winter. The snow fell gently. He knelt by her headstone, brushing the ice away from her name. A single black envelope sat tucked beneath the flowers. Inside a photo, her father standing in the distance, watching. On the back, a message written in clean, careful script. "She was the best of us. They will never forget her name." Dad, the storm had passed, but its echoes would haunt the earth for years. The storm had passed, but the sky never cleared. In the days following Kelman's confession and execution, the world trembled. Major news outlets ran the story under headlines like, "The Wolf Behind the Badge," "One Man's Confession to Decades of Racist Policing," "Justice for Alana," "The Secret Video That Shook a Town to Its Knees," "Body Cam from the Grave," "How a Father Avenged His Daughter." The footage went viral. People wept, people rioted, people remembered. Alana's name was spoken in cities she'd never visited, muraled on buildings, chanted at protests, lit up in candlelight vigils from Chicago to Cape Town. Her story cracked open the rusted hinges of the justice system, and what spilled out was everything her father had seen coming and tried, once, to avoid. In the small southern town where it all began, chaos swept through like fire. The police chief stepped down, or internal affairs officers were placed under investigation. 3 judges were suspended pending review. A dozen lawsuits were filed within the week. 8 officers were indicted on separate charges, all tied back to Kelman's ledger of buried crimes. And still, the streets filled with rage. Protesters gathered outside the station night after night, not because the father had acted, but because it had taken him to do it at all. The man they couldn't name publicly, Alana's father, became myth. Some called him a hero, others called him a murderer. Whispers called him something else entirely, the ghost of justice. But he didn't run, he didn't hide. On the 8th day he walked through the front doors of the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., dressed in black, hair grayer than ever, eyes clear and full of something between peace and grief. He placed a thick manila envelope on the desk of a startled federal agent. "Everything you need is inside," he said. The agent hesitated. "Sir, are you saying you?" "I'm not saying anything," the man replied calmly. "But I am done running." He placed a folded piece of paper on the counter. It was a list, 3 names, all crossed out in red. Then he raised his wrists and waited for the cuffs. The trial was quiet, closed to the public, buried beneath technicalities and jurisdictional whispers. No one wanted the media circus. Judge wanted the weight of his legacy on their bench. He was charged under federal murder statutes. 3 counts, premeditated, meticulous, undeniable, but his confession never came. He never took the stand, never offered a defense, never uttered Alana's name in court. The prosecution built a case from surveillance, grainy footage, and circumstantial ties. They couldn't link him to the scenes directly, he had made sure of that, but he had turned himself in, and that was enough. The verdict came on the 21st day, guilty all counts. Sentence, life without parole. He was transferred to a federal penitentiary upstate, a quiet cell, concrete floor, steel bed, 1 small window, too high to see out of. Days passed without conversation. He refused visitors. denied interviews, ignored the warden's attempts at counsel. But every night, without fail, he pulled a small notebook from beneath the mattress, and wrote, not a manifesto, not a confession, but a letter. My baby girl, I don't know if I'm still a father after what I've done. I know I'm not the man you believed in, not anymore. I've watched the world say your name. I've seen your face painted on walls, lit by candlelight, carried on signs across oceans, but I'd trade it all for one more second, one more dinner, one more laugh. One more time you called me old man and kissed my cheek. I gave them justice, baby, but I lost myself doing it. There were moments, dark ones, when I didn't know who I was anymore, when I saw you lying there in my mind and felt nothing but fire in my chest. I don't regret what I did, but I regret who I became to do it. I hope somewhere, in the place where souls go when the world's done with them, you can still see me, and I hope you forgive me for not being the man you needed me to be, but the one the world forced me to become. I love you, and I'll love you until the last breath leaves this body. Dad, he folded the page, placed it with the others, over 100 letters now, each one dated, each one ending the same way. Then he stood, walked to the narrow slit of glass on the far wall, and stared at nothing. The guard outside said he did that every night. Just stood there, silent, as if listening, as if waiting for her voice in the wind. The final image, a man sits alone in a dim concrete cell, worn, hollowed, but no longer angry. His hands rest on a single photograph, Alana, smiling, alive, forever 20. And as the camera pulls back, fading to black, his voice speaks one last time, soft, trembling, but resolute. I was never the hero she was. All I did was make sure the world finally listened.